please pray with me? Creator God, help me speak a message from you tonight that we can take home and think on. Amen.
Amen.
As I said earlier, Michael and Chris are on holiday this week. On Monday morning, I received a phone call from Michael saying that due to a bit of a mix-up in communication, there wasn't anyone on the road to preach this week, so would I be able to do it? After a moment's silence from me, he added, "You can preach on whatever you like." After another moment of silence, he said, "You can even use a sermon you've used before." And I went, "Okay then." So, I'm going to fess up right at the start. This is a pre-used sermon. However, I haven't preached it here, and I don't think many, if any of you, will have heard it before. One of the things that I have found difficult at times in my life is service. How do we, why do we, and where should we serve people? And for me, that usually starts with a definition. So I looked it up on dictionary.com, and the word service is an act of helpful activity. So, service is doing something to be helpful, usually something helpful for others. So, holding a door open, reaching for a tin or a packet of up in the supermarket for someone who can't quite reach. For the drivers among us, letting someone pull out in front of us, or again in the supermarket, letting the person behind us with one tin of baked beans go before us whilst our monthly shopping is falling off of the conveyor belt. These are all acts of service which I think most of us, apart from Keith, might have done, probably at one time or another. From the reading tonight, verse 11 says, "If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength of God, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ." So when we do those things, when we're helpful, when we hold the door open or let the person go in front of us, we should do it consciously in God's strength. And then if we do, we're praising God as we do it. Now I also want to look at a couple of other passages from the Bible tonight, both of which I think you will have probably heard before. Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 31 says, "One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus was giving them a good answer, he asked him, 'Of all the commandments, which is the most important?' 'The most important one,' answered Jesus, 'is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbour as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these.'" And then in Matthew chapter 25, verses 34 to 40, it says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my parent, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was ill, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry, or feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and go and visit you?' The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" A few years ago, Wendy and I read a book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. In this book, it talks about there being 5 ways in which we show and demonstrate our love to and feel loved by others. The 5 love languages that he speaks of are words of affirmation, when we positively assert someone, when we compliment them, when we build them up with our words; quality time, when we make time to spend with someone, or just make the most of the time we have with them. Gifts. When we give presents to someone, not necessarily anything big, it could be a daisy from the garden. Physical touch. Now, these love languages can be applied to all of our relationships, and not just the romantic ones. So physical touch can be touching someone's arm or giving them a hug, as well as the sexual touching that we have within our romantic relationships. And 5, acts of service, where we do something helpful for others. To say this book was life-changing can be quite an overused term. However, for us, this book was just that. Once we had read this book and shared our own personal love languages with each other, and those of you who once we had read this book, we shared our personal love languages with each other. And those of you who know her will not be surprised to find out that Wendy's main love language is acts of service, doing things for others. So, through reading this book and then talking with Wendy about it and the meanings within it, I came to understand that at the time when I got home in the evening from work and Wendy had done the housework and prepared me a meal, that was one of the ways in which she was showing me that she loved me. And I also understood that that once I understood that, I was able to do things to show her that I loved her too. Now, I don't really do gardens, Keith will tell you, but Wendy loves our garden. I personally don't get it though. I once, in fact, read a definition of a weed is an unwanted plant. And using that definition, to me, almost everything growing in our garden is a weed, apart from the rose. I love our rose bush. However, I remember one day when Wendy had gone out for the day with her daughter Catherine. I spent 3 to 4 hours in the garden. I cut the lawn, I weeded, trying to weed only the plants that Wendy would define as weeds. I jet washed the patio, I swept, and I stood back at the end of it, and to me it really didn't look much different. And I was slightly worried that Wendy might not notice. However, when she walked through the gate, she burst into tears because she knew how much I must love her to do such a task, as I found it so exacting and toilsome. I had told her that I love her simply by performing an act of service. There have been many times in this church where I have not been able to perform the tasks I've been assigned to do. When that happens, someone else always picks up the slack. And when that does happen, the person who is picking up the slack, who's doing what I should have been doing, not only is saying to me, I love you, they are also saying it to Michael, to James, to Robert, to Wendy, to Simon, to Vicky, to everyone, to the village MCC. I love you and I will do this act of service for you. But let's be blunt here. It's an awful lot easier to do things for people we love and know, or when we're serving, is doing something we like and enjoy. For me, when a friend needs someone to use as a sounding board, that's easy. I love my friends and it's something I enjoy doing. When someone here asks me to pray for them, again, no problem. When Wendy says to me, darling, would you take me to Hobbycraft, please? I'm not going to say no. Ever. It's my favourite store. But when she says, darling, do you think you could water the garden, please? There is hardly ever going to be a time when I think, yay, I was just thinking about doing that. It doesn't matter how much pain I'm in, how tired I am, I still want to go and do it though, because I know that it's one of the ways I can express my love for her. So if acts of service are a way of showing people that we love them, what about what I read in Mark earlier? Jesus commanded to love our neighbours as we love ourselves. And our neighbour could be anyone. In fact, our neighbour is everyone. It's the person in the property next to yours. It's the person sitting opposite you on the train. It's even, and I'm really sorry to say this, it's even the person on the phone cold calling you to try and get you to change your electricity provider just as you're trying to serve dinner. It's also the person living on the streets, shivering and hungry. And then in Matthew it talks about us feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, taking in the homeless, visiting those in prison and looking after those who are unwell. Now, I'm not saying that in this day and age we should go out, find ourselves the first homeless person we come to and ask them if they would like to stay in our spare room or sleep on our couch. However, we here at the village have Sleep Safe, where we are trying to help those that are LGBT and homeless. And there are many, many other charities out there who help people on the streets. I'm not saying that we should go out and make a big casserole and take it down to the seafront and offer it to anyone who looks hungry. But there are ways to help the hungry. Lunch Positive is a great local charity who provides a delicious, and I'm speaking from experience, a delicious main meal for those affected by HIV and AIDS on Friday lunchtimes. I'm not saying that we pick the name of a criminal and try and get ourselves onto their visitor list, but there are charities set up to enable people to become pen pals to people in prison. There's a charity I know of called Lifelines, who match volunteers to write to men and women on death row in America. Jesus says, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was ill and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came and visited me." And the reading tonight said, if anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. Maybe doing service for us is about doing these things consciously and mindfully, remembering that we are called to love those we are doing these things for, and that every helpful act we perform for someone, we're praising God. Amen.
Amen.